Welcome to Cheery Conversations, where we all overcome our uncertainties and juicy topics one conversation at a time. Every week we're joined by author, speaker, and pastor Sonny Hennessy, along with a special guest. And this week our special guest is Stephanie Charney.
But she prefers
Stephanie
Charney.
I think you said you even asked your husband if you could change the name, but he said no?
Yeah,
he said no.
Did you want it to sound French?
I just wanted it to sound less
Charney.
Midwest.
Charney. Stephanie. So we're with Stephanie Charney, who is married to Bo. They have been married for 9 years. They share 2 beautiful boys. I am using some of her words because that might be creepy if I'm like,
They're
2 beautiful boys.
You didn't say your husband was beautiful though. That's better. Okay.
And they are Benjamin and Joseph, but you call him Jojo, which is that is really cute. They love spending time creating adventures with each other and their families, especially outdoors. And Stephanie might look familiar to some of you because she is one of our worship leaders on our worship team.
She has a really cool voice.
She has an amazing voice. So today we are going to be talking with
With Stefani. Gwen Stefani is in town.
Oh my God.
No, Stefani.
So today we are going to be talking with Sonny and Stephanie.
Can you go by Sonny?
Sonny and Stephanie.
Let's mix it up.
We're talking with Stephanie and Sonny all about the circumstance of having a spouse who has a job that requires some travel. And I don't mean just like, oh, I'm going somewhere for the night, like travel. Like they're gone for days, weeks, months, sometimes a year at a time. And so maybe that's you that's watching, or maybe you have a spouse that has that. So we're gonna talk to Stephanie about that. Can you tell our listeners and viewers what kind of a situation you're in with your husband, with Bo?
Sure. So, like you said, we've been married for 9 years. He is in the military. He's been in the National Guard for about 18 years, and he took an active duty position just coming up on 2 years. So, in the course of that career, he's had 3 deployments, one for 18 months, and then the last 2 for a year each.
They're so long for him.
Yeah.
Why? They like him?
That's just
He's really good.
Yeah,
He's really good. Okay,
Yeah, he's
okay.
super great.
Wow. So almost over 3 years of your 9-year marriage.
No, so
Okay.
the first deployment, the longest one, we weren't together.
Okay.
So, and then the second one, we actually met, and 6 months later, he left.
Wow.
So that was the start of our relationship. So that was an interesting way to get to know someone.
Is it true that distance makes the heart grow fonder?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Aw, that's good to know.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, obviously you have your ups and downs because you have to figure out a new way to communicate and a new way to speak your love language to each other.
Yeah.
But, man, when he comes home, it's like,
Yeah.
it's the best.
It's so
So
good.
did you know, when you met him, did you know he was in the military? And okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a surprise, like, oh, and now I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we met, I think like the first or second time that we went out, he was like, "Oh, hey, P.S. I'm leaving in 6 months," and I was like, "I don't care."
Love is
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
That is so great. So tell us about that first time that he was deployed and you were by yourself. Did you have the kiddos? You were by yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does that compare to the deployment when you had kids?
Oh my goodness, it's worlds different. So the first deployment, I was 19, maybe 19 or 20. So I was just fresh-faced, you know, and I was just learning how to pay my own bills, honestly. And when he left, he asked me if I would house sit his house because he had a house. So I was like, sure, I'll watch your house. So I lived there by myself in a 3-bedroom house, had no idea what I was doing. Everything broke. You know?
Gosh.
So I luckily have a super handy brother who helped out with all of that stuff. But yeah, it was tough. It was lonely, I would say, the first time around.
Yeah.
I had to really try and occupy my time with things and people, and luckily I was a part of a church family, so I had that going for me. And I had some really tough family stuff going on during that time as well. My dad had passed away right at the same time that Bo was deployed, so it was just a tough time. And then the second deployment, it went by so fast.
Really?
Yeah.
With the kids?
Because I had the boys.
Oh.
They kept me so busy. I mean, I we were like halfway through and I was like, oh my goodness, like
He's already coming home.
I wanted to lose 15 more pounds before he got home. I wasn't ready for this.
So that's probably good advice for people though, right? Like have some things you want to do before they get home so that you're not like waiting every week for the countdown.
Yeah, we didn't even have a countdown until the last month.
Okay.
Because it was too big of a time frame for the kids to even comprehend. So
How old were your boys on that deployment?
it was just he just got home in December, so they were 3 and 6.
And how did they, like how did you explain to them, oh, Daddy's gonna be gone for 18 months or however long? How did you talk them through that?
Yeah, it was a lot of tiptoeing around the situation, honestly. I mean, we had more difficult conversations with my oldest. He's super into military anything, so he thinks Dad is like the
superhero.
Yeah.
Because he is.
Yeah. So he understood a little bit more. The little guy, he didn't get any of it. So we made some photo albums for them so they could look through them of just pictures of them and Dad. Cool. And they like carried them around with them. And then we made the stuffy that's the picture of my husband. And so they
A stuffy?
Yeah, it's like a stuffed animal, but it's like a cutout of him.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Why did you bring that?
Oh,
I know.
Yeah. I should have made one for myself, honestly. I was like, just tuck him in bed.
Put him under the covers next to you. It's so funny.
Yeah. So we did little things like that. And then, internet was sparse. You never know what you're going to get. So he would do a lot of pre-recorded messages and send them to the kids. And then we would do that in return for him.
That's really cool. Those are all really great
Great
tips.
ideas.
So, Sonny, I mean, you travel, you and Sean both travel a lot, but I know at one point you were married, Sean traveled a lot. So, kind of similar, how did that work in your marriage? I guess one of the questions is this, when you're physically apart like that, how do you still focus and work on your marriage? How do you still keep it growing and still strong?
For me, I missed him, so that was a good part of it. Like that was the plus, is that you're like, oh, it's like a new boyfriend. Yeah. Is that bad? It's like,
great.
oh, I missed you, and your breath is not bad. Like it's good because I missed it. So there was that side of it. But Isaiah was, when he traveled his last year on the road. When Isaiah was, what would it have been? Isaiah was 3 and Aubrey was 1.5, was his last year on the road. And he was gone 50 weeks of the 52 weeks. Now, it wasn't like solid, he would come home, but he'd come home, wash his clothes, pack, and go. Wow. And so we'd have like a day with him. So we had 50 days with him that year.
Which is almost tougher, if I can say, like having that interruption.
To say goodbye again, yeah.
And then having to readjust and get back into your routine that you've created.
Yeah.
Which I wonder how many people who maybe they work for Schreiber or they travel and it is that constant. So you begin to, I loved that he loved to do what he did. He loved it. He loved to travel. He never really traveled outside of his little city block growing up. So for him, he's like seeing the world and all this. So I love that for him, and I loved that he made good money, so it was very supportive of our family. And I loved that when he was home, he didn't work. And I think that's a lot of people's story, is that, well, when they're home, they're really home. Like I'm looking, and you have to kind of find those nuggets of this is good for this reason. He could be home all day or all week, but do we just see him in the evening a little? But now we get 2 days of just like go to, Bay Beach or something. So we were in Florida, so we, would try to do Disney or something major on that day. But yes, it was like Isaiah, he would cry when we'd start to go to the airport. And he'd look up, and when he'd see a plane, he'd point, but he'd also cry often. And that actually is what had Sean decide to come off the road.
Oh, wow.
Because that was happening. And it was just like, it's just not working. So because it's tough. So you have a love and a hate relationship with it, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, I knew when I married Sean, he wasn't going to be a traditional guy. And you knew when you met Bo, it's not going to be this traditional. So you almost have to do you have to do this? Do you have to take yourself back to that moment? I fell in love. I knew what I was getting into. I can't now hate his life and him because I don't like it now. It's hard. Yeah.
I like that you said that, because I mean, I can't really, my husband doesn't travel, he actually works from home. He's like, works from home.
Which
Which is great. I love love that. I love that. So I can't relate to that. I love that you said that because I'm sure that people in a similar situation have that thought of the love and hate and maybe don't want to admit that, right?
Yeah.
But it's a real feeling that it's because it's hard. Tell me this though. So they're gone for long periods of time. You kind of have your own routine and now they're back. How do you handle that adjustment period back?
Like, take that bag and move it.
my
It's
gosh.
never been messy in that corner of the kitchen until you got home.
Yeah.
You just have to bite your tongue a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, and the bag thing, I mean...
Bag, I know how I say bag.
No, and just like military life with all of the stuff,
Yeah.
it just gets poured everywhere. Like, I mean, the bedroom and just everywhere, just all the stuff. So that is like tough too. And I'm someone who likes things very much in their spot. Everything has a home. And my husband is too, to a certain point, but his homes are different than mine.
They're in a desert. They're in a tent.
Double bake.
So that readjustment period is tough. Luckily, military families have support in that. We do some reintegration where they talk to you about, you know, this is going to be tough. This month is going to be hard to get them reacclimated to what normal life looks like, what grass looks like again, what it's like to be able to just go wherever you want to go. So luckily we have tools that we get equipped with, but it's still tough. And it's really tough with the kids because they're used to just coming to mom for everything. And you know, when he left this last deployment, Jojo was in a crib and in diapers and with a nookie, and when he came home he was like big boy to the max, and he's like, who is this little guy? So I'd say that's the toughest part, but you get through it, and you know, you come out stronger together because you work through it.
It's good that there's support that you have in the military
yeah.
for families where maybe they're traveling not as often. They're not gone for a year, but they're gone 5 days a week every week. One thing I really feel is important, and I think my mom gave me this advice. She said, don't have your home. And this was like when Sean and I were going through hard times. She said his home should be a haven, whether he comes home from out of state or just from the office. It should be like a haven. It should be like peaceful and like the paradise he needs. Because if it's not, he'll come home later and later and later. Or, I mean, Bo doesn't really have, so I'm not speaking to this, but the business person who they'll say, oh, I'll take that trip for somebody else. Yeah. And oh, I'll stay late in the office, because when they get home, because we have our routines, it's like when they get home, we have the list for them. I had to get rid of Post-it notes to keep our marriage. Like, honestly, I was like, I'm gonna give him a Post-it note, everything he needs to do. And his rebellion wasn't to say no, it was to ignore the Post-it note, which then created more of a fight. But I was mothering him, and when he'd come home, he'd need to get the task done. And especially if he'd been gone for a while, it was, I've done diapers all week, it's on you. And like all of us women would say, that's really normal. Like, of course we'd say it's on, but here's the thing, like, we love it and then we hate it. It's a love-hate relationship with this kind of a life. We can't take out all that hate part about it on the person who's bringing in the finances and who we also love them. And I think that can happen, the hate of this job and this routine and that I'm changing all the diapers and you're exhausted when you get home and it isn't fair. We have to let the love of that person outweigh the hate that we want to put on them, because there are a lot of women that the guy walks in the door, no matter where, even if he works from home, you know, that it's like, all right, you're on, and it's just because guys will take it. But here's the thing, I knew also that if Sean was away and it wasn't good at home, and he's away and it's not good at home, and he's away and it's not good at home, that's where affairs are easy to happen. Or, you know, man, there's been people in our life that were like, this guy carried on an affair with a girl in Colorado for 4 years. And we're like, what? Well, he always traveled there. But there it was peaceful, exciting, and fun. Or we knew another guy, he was military, and he met somebody in another country on a weekend they got off. And he just carried on this like movie. And it wasn't real. It didn't last because it was just this, but to that guy, what home reflected was the cranky wife that's irritated. And I think we have to safeguard our marriage, and we have to love at a new level when it's just not normal. We just do.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the word that I use a lot is resentment. I feel like that's so easy to build up when you're in a situation like that. And for me, the most important thing that I found was having other wives that are going through the same thing. Because if you can relate to someone and have a conversation and see like, it's okay, they're getting through the same garbage that you're going through, that it's harder to build up resentment when you
don't feel alone entirely.
Right, exactly.
What if you find a friend though that they're just fueling that fire?
Oh, I really lucked out.
Okay, good. Because that could be really bad. If they're like, he should be doing more, I think then you kind of put your guard up, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, we don't have to spend as much time together. You're making it worse. Yeah, like the friends who are like, that dirty Dom, divorce him. And you're like, oh, I don't think that's what I should be being told right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you lucked out with a group of 3 gals that we got together once a month, and it was really great to have that support.
Good.
That's great. I was thinking too, as you guys were talking, that, we kind of talk about like our resentment or our like hate for something, but, maybe think about, our guys that are in that job role, they don't want to be away from their family as much as you don't want them to be away, or they don't want to.
But when they
travel as
appear
much.
like they like it, then you resent that they love being
We're
away
just
from
having
me.
so much fun.
So this is speaking from, we've been there. We're like, oh, you enjoyed the Alps?
Yeah. You mean you had a meal and nobody was pulling on your shirt asking for a bite?
See, this comes out. And then you go, nope, that's not how I can do it.
Yeah, for sure, right? But for sure, because that's real.
Yeah.
And then, thinking of like putting yourself in that place too. I mean, this is so not even close, but my husband's going to school right now. Well, works full time, going to school means less time with our family sometimes. And that can make me like, I really wanted to do this. Oh, I can't plan that because you have to study. And I could be like, but I know that in the long run, he's only doing it for our family because it's job security. It's maybe higher pay. It's something that was on his goal list. And so, if I look past the immediate, negative of it, there's something bigger there. And really, it's because they're doing it for a family. Like, he's in the military for a lot of reasons, supporting the family. Sean was doing, like you said, brought in a good salary. So looking kind of past that sometimes it's us, it's a me thing.
Well, let's face it, us ladies, this is juicy topics. Us ladies want it all. I want it all. I want him to look this way, act this way, make this amount of money, have this much ambition to want to go do more, which would take him away from the family. So I want all that, but then I want him with me like 24/7 at a coffee house, looking into each other's eyes, and it looks like a love movie. Like, I want all that. And we can be our own worst enemy because, and I'm all about high expectations, but sometimes we put expectations that are Hollywood level, that are not even true on our own life, and then we wonder why we're disappointed.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So, and Sean is actually, his favorite thing is romantic movies. Like, he's like,
really?
I think on stage one time he did like the deer dance, going in the field and the butterflies, and talking about, a great love story is you're like running towards each other in a field of daisies. And here's the reality. Most of us, we come home at night, and it's like, hey, or it's hey, or nothing. And then, do you want to know what your child did today? Do you want to hear what happened? Oh my, and that's not just on us, they do that too, but that has been the biggest key to our new side of our marriage. The last, how many has it been now? 13, 14 years, has been that I'm not the naggy mom, grouchy. I wouldn't want to be my own roommate if I acted the way I did in the first part of our marriage, keeping and paying the bills. So I'm telling him what to do with money. Now I'm like, you pay the bills, you're the man, you're my hero. And I get to not. And also just realizing he doesn't need to hear my anger with Isaiah right now. Not right this second. And it doesn't happen always perfect. But how do I prepare my home when we come together, whether after a year, like you really get support and you know what you're planning, but also at the end of a day, how do I prepare that? And I'm not talking in an apron and I cook dinner, because sometimes I come home after him, but we drive in the driveway at the same time we walk in the door. And how have I prepared my heart, my mind, my mouth to bite my tongue, to be like this girl that he loved and asked to marry him? We talked about it on a cheery conversation, like getting out of the sweat clothes. And, I would rather look cruddy at home. But there's times you just go, who did he marry? Yeah. And that's my part in the equation of whether they're gone a lot or they're never gone.
Yeah, it's true. That's good. That's such good advice. I want the viewers and listeners to hear this story that you shared with us before we started filming, because I think when you're by yourself in a lot of situations, whether it's because your spouse is traveling or maybe just another reason, but when you're by yourself, sometimes we make ourselves feel by ourselves and lonely. So, but you shared this story that I thought was really insightful.
Yeah. So during the deployment, I had a really hard time asking for help, mostly because I wanted to prove to myself and show my husband that I've got it. Like, I don't need help. I'm independent. But I found out that being independent doesn't mean you can't ask for help, right? So we have the pastor who married Bo and I. Him and his wife checked up on me and the boys once a month, sometimes more frequently than that, and asked me if I needed anything around the house, and I was like, no, I'm good. And then one night he finally was like, okay, Lisa and I are coming over at 5 o'clock with pizza to watch the boys. Leave.
So good.
Yeah, it was really great. And that for me was a whole experience that showed that not letting people help is taking away their joy or stealing their joy. They really wanted to help and wanted to be a part of it. So they came over and did it another time as well. But it was so great.
That's so good. And there's two lessons in that, right? There's you needed it and you humbled yourself to go, yeah, I need it. And then you allowed them to have joy and feel, because we have people in our life that there's a diagnosis of cancer or they're going through a divorce or there's a death in the family, and we're like, can I do anything? And of course they're like, pray, of course, but it does make you realize how much you are special to them when they allow you to do something for them. And so the reciprocal, I think you showed them your love for them that you accepted. And I think really we all should do that more.
That's really good. Yeah. And for those who want to help people, sometimes it's just do it.
Just do it. Don't wait for asking.
Just do it. Yeah, I think it's really great. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question because some people watching may not have a spouse that's in the military, may not have a spouse that's in the ministry, but they could still have a spouse that is traveling or away from home. So they can still relate to the situation. So we ask this question a lot, but I think maybe the answer can be different depending on the circumstance. When you are so essentially, you're kind of like a single mom for 18 months. How do you manage still taking care of yourself? I know one of the things is letting people help you, but how do you manage taking care of yourself and feeling like, okay, I'm supporting my husband. I'm gonna separate that love and the hate. I'm gonna support what he's doing. But I have all of this to manage. I have twice as much to manage because it's just me. How do you manage supporting what your spouse is doing when they're away and appreciating it while still trying to manage taking care of yourself?
Do you want to go first?
Oh, you go first.
You sure?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah. It was really good for me to have a job while Sean was gone. And I know that's not for everybody, so if that's not the case, and I was just telling someone on our staff this week that the best one was when I worked 2 days a week, and then the rest of the time I was home, because it made me a better mom, it made me excited to see my kids, it gave me a break. I basically made zero. By the time I paid for 2 days of childcare, I probably paid $15 to have a job. It was not for that. But it did, I got to feel like I had purpose. I had a reason to get up and put my makeup on and do my hair. And then when I came home, I'm like, oh, I said, Aubrey, I just love you and I want to sit with you for hours at night. Well, when I was with him nonstop, I didn't want to sit with them at all because I was with them all the time. So that was good for me. However, I know people that wouldn't work, and that's fine. Having maybe, if there's not a mother-in-law or a grandmother or somebody in town to help, like that person who's like, offers even one time, go ahead and let them watch your kid and go to Starbucks, go to the Exchange, go to some little library. And just like have time to decompress. And then don't just do that once in a year. Do that maybe once a month or once a quarter to start. That's how I would do it. Do you have any?
What did you do?
Oh my gosh. No, I think for me it was really about having the support of the other ladies. I think that's really what got me through. Because we had something scheduled every month that we would get together, and it would be scheduled for 2 hours, but it would last 8 hours.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I really think for me that was the biggest thing, and it's my husband always says this. It's a Clint Eastwood quote, I believe.
Okay.
It's improvise, adapt, and overcome, and I feel like that's really
so good.
Good job, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Come on. Yes.
But I really feel like you have to take that like motto when you're walking through something like that in your life. You really have to improvise with the tools and the people that you have around you, and adapt to your circumstances, and then eventually you'll overcome it, and it'll be great.
A girls' night out could be an adaptation.
Yes.
I don't do girls' night out, but maybe you start doing that. That's so good.
That's so good. I think too sometimes we don't do things because we feel that like guilt or that shame of, well, one parent is already gone, I can't be gone too. But Sonny says this all the time, you can't be good for anyone unless you yourself are good. And so getting over that thought process of, yes, they need you, but they also need you to be good. And that means sometimes spending time away. So I love this conversation. I hope our listeners and viewers took something away from this that they can relate. Thank you to Bo and Stephanie, because being a military family is hard.
Yeah, thank you.
And there is sacrifice. So we love our military men and women who serve. So we just love that we had this conversation today with Stephanie. Thank you for joining us.
If you would like to maybe give information on someone who you think should be a guest on Cheery Conversations, that would be great. We'd love to hear it. And you can contact me directly about that or anything else at sunnyhennessy.com. Also, Cheery Conversations is on podcast on all platforms, so you'll hear our conversation on there every Thursday, a new conversation.
I love that. You can just turn the volume up really loud and hear us laugh.
Yes. It'll break your ears.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week at the same time for another Cheery Conversation.